Hi, everybody. Monday on Astral Oracles, and we're going to talk about the resurrection. Um, which one, you ask? We'll see. My brother Seth, he had it out for me, and so no, not that resurrection miracle. Okay, well, you see, at around the time of the Second Temple Judaism, I was a spiritual teacher in Judea, and I put on all kind of hilarious performances with a donkey and people getting to torture me to death. And then guess who's back? No, not that resurrection miracle either. Okay, so um, I was a mad, brilliant scientist who traveled amongst the dimensions, but I wanted to get out of family therapy, so I turned myself into a pickle. Not that resurrection miracle either. Okay, which one is it? Well, yes, it is. Tim Finnegan lived in Walking Street. An Irish gentleman, mighty odd. He had a brogue both rich and sweet, and to rise in the world he carried a hod. This is both the introduction to not the book Finnegans Wake, but the ballad Finnegans Wake, and in an Irish dancehall ballad, which Joyce uses as the central resurrection myth for this his master opus. I did a video on this 2 days ago, but it didn't really pan out. And now here we are. It is June 16th, 2024 by date, which makes it Bloomsday. And for that reason, we are going to talk about Finnegans Wake. And Bloomsday, if you don't know it, refers to June 16th, 1904, which is the day where um, the events of Joyce's other magnum opus and the centerpiece of 20th century literature, Ulysses, is set. And what actually happened on that day was that him and Nora Barnacle, they went on a date in Dublin, and sexual stuff ensued, and for that he was forever grateful and smitten, and so they wound up living together, and she was his muse and counterpart throughout that lifetime where he was James Joyce. And after he wrote Ulysses, he created the night book to go with that book of the day, and this is Finnegans Wake. This is the book of the night, and it doesn't take place anywhere. It takes place in your dreams. It takes place in hyperspace. It takes place in the ethers, the Akashic field, or these soups of semantic meaning, where everything kind of means several things at once. It's an absolutely gorgeous book. Um, and it is a book that acts as a psychoactive. So something is happening here, but you don't know what it is, do you, Mr. Jones? Because I know people who are literature aficionados, great readers, people who have the skill, patience, and knowledge to appreciate books such as Ulysses, for instance, which are books that can be hard to approach but also very, very rewarding, and who will still automatically dismiss Finnegans Wake as mental masturbation. That's usually the shorthand they go to. It simply short circuits them and puts them off in ways that they can't handle. And yet, we wrote this book for ourselves in a past lifetime so that we may have the Aquarian tome that we could use again and lifetime and lifetime and lifetime. Because what happened at the wake with Tim Finnegan, the poor, drunk, and hot layer who worked in Walking Street, was that he, poor Betty, poor drunk, he fell down a ladder and broke his skull. he had gotten into the whiskey again that morning, and it had gotten it had gotten to be too much. And so at the wake they gather, and at an Irish wake uh, there's always lots of the Ishkabar, the water of life, going around. Uh, and at some point they get up to fight an argument there, and then a mighty brawl did then ensue, and woman to woman and man to man. And at some point somebody throws a bottle of whiskey across the room, and it hits and scatters all over Tim, and there begat how he rises, see how he rises in the bed, and thunder and Jesus, did you think I was dead? So Tim, like this poor bricklayer, the sorriest worker, like this poor drunk, becomes resurrected man. And in that miracle, he becomes the big master, the big master, Finnegan, begin again. And it's this is the central motif of it. There's then like all these divisionary motifs, especially the male and the female, um, HCE and ALP, but the central motif that's taking place in every word, in every combination, in every manifestation of meaning that goes on in Finnegans Wake, is the breakdown of the world as we know it, and then the resurrection into this new manifold scheme of meaning. And we wrote this to us because we wrote this for ourselves in that lifetime when we were James Joyce, because we had such a hangover. Joyce was an alcoholic. We had such a hangover that had gone on for at least 2,000 years, of like the only thing that could restore us was a bit of a fight, some dirty puns, which it's very very rich in, and then of course a sip of the water of life. And we feel so hungover still, that we created this kind of multi-semantic tome for ourselves instead, so that every time we actually needed some life and restoration in the future Aquarian era, we could go back and just consult with the wake. And it has all the hallmarks of a secret text, meaning that it's very easily accessible, but also so incredibly condensed that you can just let it affect you, and you can take every little piece of it apart. But it also rewards you. So the more skill, understanding, patience, knowledge, zaniness you bring to it, the more it opens up. And it's actually written as a collective novel. I don't mean that genre-wise. I mean that it's meant. I'd rather say it's a social tome. So it's meant for people to read it in concert and read it together, and read it aloud. So it also celebrates that great, especially Irish tradition, but of course the tradition of human storytelling, and out in the where the world grows dark in the winter. That's how they passed their time originally, telling all these stories, apart from, of course, drinking when they could and getting up to what humans otherwise get up to in the dark. Um, so, in these deep, multi layered meanings, always the immediate layer are always these silly, dirty puns that then show you something, usually about like psychological layers and like these motifs and frameworks within very very often complex sentence structures that you may or may not be able to piece together. And then that is telling, repeating and reiterating a lot of historical motifs, um, and that has a lot of religious innuendo, And so, for instance, another motif is the Arcturus that's related to the author, and again, this renewing star that keeps appearing in the sky. It's an absolutely stirring, revolutionary, magnificent, glorious piece of work. Um, and while Ulysses did, among other things, what it is intended to, and illustrated the flow of time and life, and began the eon of Horus, and began the manifold unfolding and restructuring of time into a kind of spherical resonance that Jung later called synchronicity. And Jung was also a student of Ulysses. Um, but where it did that, and what it also did, was it tore down the walls and barriers, partially of Victorian morality, and partially of Irish Catholic morality. What it did was, of course, like it brought back something like Molly Bloom into the main driver's seat and attention of literature. So again, placing, a woman in all her full and gory glory as the proper object of artistic reverence. He also does in a very humorous way, and in a very loving way. And of course, what he does is also that he takes the English language away from the conquerors of his homeland, and then he hands it over to the global awareness. Because what is so hilarious is that this book is, because it kind of works like a Rorschach test or abstract expressionism of words folding into each other. It also rewards people who have manifold language skills. So the more language you know, and the more vocabulary you have, the more you also can interpret out of it. And Joyce, who spoke and read Danish and Dano-Norwegian, and of course adored Ibsen above a few others. There's a lot of Scandinavian in here, and partially the protagonist is a Dano-Norwegian innkeep who's gone to Dublin, and that's that Viking motif, and Hamlet, and that old connection wherein, both in Beowulf and in Hamlet and in this one, for some reason there is that connection between that side of the Atlantic and this side of the Atlantic. And that's embedded within it. So to get a lot of these deep insight jokes and puns, there's in that. It reveals itself through the framework of your language. And so the big master is spelled out Bygmester, and that is both the title of Ibsen's Big Master Soulness, or Master Builder Soulness. So that's of course the opposite guy in the construction site from the hot layer. That's the master builder, the one who builds the plan, the one he's turning into from the lowliest to the highest, the divine alchemist, right? He's refining that principle and distilling the water of life out of us. But it also means literally in Scandinavian, it can also be read as barley master. The BIG is like is barley, the grain which you of course use to make whiskey. And so you have that entire pun that you kind of understand as soon as these two languages pair up, where that's super humorous. Like, it's again Barley Master Finnegan begin again, like I got drunk again, and then stuff happened, and then I found myself in the morning and had to pick myself up, and now I channeled this text in a former lifetime, so I wouldn't have to keep doing this. um and so that's how we use it. So we use it every time we return to it. We renew ourselves, and so many of us have been to the wake when we were out awakening, uh, and found exactly the patterns and the life force and the revitalization that we needed to within this text. So this is what gave rise to McLuhan's vision, was his readings and meeting of the wake. And in the lifetime when we were Saint Terence McKenna and his brother Dennis too, we're still around, by the way. We went to La Chorrera, and there we had to leave the wake. We had to leave the wake behind to lighten our loads, and there we found the mushroom and brought that back. And now what we're doing in this lifetime is that we're anchoring the eon in the rod of the python, and the python is the rod at the center of the navel of the world where the voice of God speaks. It's the oracle at Delphi, and that's what we're doing. We're taking like this semantic rod, this death. Which literally is alcohol, right? Like this yeasty toxin, and then brewing all these refined things out of it by dying and living again and again. And that is the sacred. That's the sacred tome of the wake, and it, like, if I can just try to convey one of these like weird puns I have with it, and why I'm speaking about it in the first person plural. So it is that strange sense, right, that in 120 years ago today we went on a date with a girl named Nora Barnacle, and in this lifetime, then on March 2nd in 2022, we went on a date with her again, and her name was Molly McGiven, and we, on a foggy day, we hit peak delusion walking around Phoenix Park, and that was somehow also an encounter that we needed in this lifetime, that became so static and electric that we had to go all the way to the Pacific and leave her there at the Mount of all motherly creation, Mount Ka, to escape her Circean magic, so we could get back here and put on our Hamlet act for this lifetime. And we love her madly, but we never want to see her again until the next time around in the next lifetime. And the only thing we have to convey to her is get thee to a nunnery. Because above all else, Joyce also adored Shakespeare, of course, and that's Hamlet for you. Um, so it is this recurring joke, this recurring pun, where life seems to have been laid out in strange ways, where it's actually clues you can discover to awaken it. And the hilarious thing is, then I also realized, and I've been pointing to this point in my life when I was 14 and my parents got divorced, and I was going away from home from school for a year, and I was having my first sexual experiences, and there was like nobody around to guide me. And there I discover an album called The Moment of Truth by Gangstar, and that's one of the most classic hip hop albums of the 90s boom bap era. And that kind of began like my love story with the English language and trying to understand all the weird, incomprehensible layers I hadn't been taught. And so, of course, in the first track of that one, there is another teacher calling himself the Guru, may he rest in peace, who says that the rejected stone has become the cornerstone. So I'll be like the master builder when I make my way home. You know my steez. And what are those steez? Yes, what are they about, right? That's the eternal proliferation and magic of language that arises from inventiveness, and that arises from the night of dreams and death, and all the places that we don't dare to go, and yet we are often brought into. So that is the realm of the night, and I think with that talk, I hope it conveyed something, and it's also just one of these decompression talks where I try to spread my enthusiasm, and there might be a person or two who's enjoying that, or some other wakeheads or somebody who loves it. But I think to illustrate how this book also wants to be channeled and let out, I'll read a page for you. And let's try to do it rhapsodomantically, which means that you let simply the randomness of the text guide you into what your soul wants to show you in this moment. With that, I send you my love out there, guys. Oh, so we are here at page 100 and 146. Your hair magic, if you had one. If I am laughing with you, no lovingness, I am not so dying to take my rise out of you, adored. Not in the very least. True as God made my Maymore hip-length modesty co-author. It's only because the reason is I'm only any girl, you lovely fellow of my dreams, and because old some booby is not around about, my trysting of the tulipies, like that puff pig bucking Deveron, soiling us behind. What a nerve! He thinks that's what the Vespries for. How vain that's hope in cleric's heart, who still pursues that old rouse heart. Cocksure that rusty gown of his will make fair Sue forget his fist. Tame Schwips, blessed Marguerite bosses, I hope they threw away the mold, or else we'll have Bolshusses and sour dermablers with their medical assassinations all over the place. But whole heart till I've got my latchkey vote, and I'll teach him when to wear what woman colours. On account of the gloss of the glazen as a barbarous Isa be able. And because you pluckless Lankaloot, I hate the very thought of the thought of you, and because, stealing, of course, Adoris, I was always meant for an engineer from the French college to be husband, nom donjon, when we do and contract with Inoko Tenko Solver, when you are married to reading and writing, which please business now, won't be long, for he's so loopy on me, and I'm so leapy, like since the day he carried me from the boat, my saviour of Eros, to the beach, and I left on his shoulder one fair hair to guide hand and minds to its softness. Ever so sorry, I beg your pardon, I was listening to every treasured word I said, fell from my dear Mutt's tongue, otherwise could I see what you were thinking of, Art Granny. Only I wondered if I threw out my shaven water. Anyway, here's my arm, Politnik, gracefully yours. Move your mouth towards mine, more preciousest, more and more. To please me, treasure, don't be I'm not going to, sure nothing. I'll creakly somewhere. Boyo, I'm fly, here, Pippi, under the limes. You know, big tree all against gravestone. The hiss, tendency, garned on man. So chirp, chirp, sigolo for the luck of Mago. The little pastor, I go you before, so, and you're at my apron stage. Shy as him, Dubby, misforget there's an audience. I have been lost, angel, cuddle ye, devil ye. It's our toot a toot, here, sensation. Let them their whole for courtships. That was a page of The Wake. And if you're still hanging on there, I send you my love again.